Jamie, is the correct screen still showing?
Yes,
Okay.
I've got the agenda showing. I can see several, not all, but several, which is
All right, you guys are live.
Jamie, do any of them scare you?
only myself.
Okay, Mayor, I think whenever you want to do, call the meeting to order and we'll do roll call.
Call the meeting to order. Please do roll call.
Okay, I'm going to call Finance Committee first. Akers,
Here,
Dobbins,
unmute Dobbins.
I am trying. I'm here, I swear.
Simmons,
Here.
Milton. I can see his phone number, but I think we may be having some issues. Here we go. Mr. Milton, can you hear me? Okay, I just admitted him. I believe he's here. It's just on mute. Yancey
I'm here.
and Romine.
Here.
Okay, Mayor, we have a quorum for the Finance Committee. I'll call Capital next. Akers,
Here,
Dobbins,
Here.
King,
Here.
Buckley,
Here.
Pinkley.
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
thank you. Regular reports.
Yes, so first, it looks like we need approval of the minutes from July 30th of 2020.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of July 30, 2020?
I'll make a motion. This is Pam.
Second?
Stan will second those.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions? Please voice your approval by saying aye if you approve of the minutes.
Aye.
Aye.
Say no if you don't. The ayes have it. Then the monthly sales and tourism tax reports.
Okay, I'm just going to do a quick rundown. Please, if anyone has any questions, just interrupt me and let me know. And I will stop the report so you can ask any questions. Let's see, Mrs. King, this is your first meeting, so please, if you have any questions on these, I will try to explain what everything is in detail. But if you do have any additional questions, just let us know, and Jamie and I will answer. So the first report we have here is going to be our 1% sales tax. So we are showing the month that we have received. So these numbers are for receipts in August. Really, we're looking at June business activity for the most part. So for August receipts, we were down 28.1% compared to last month. The good news is it is less of a decrease than we saw the 2 previous months, but it is still quite lower than what we would normally expect to see at this time. Year to date, that put our receipts at about 5.8 million, and that is a decrease of 18.7% year to date over 2019.
And that year to date is basically through the end of June.
June business activity, yes.
Yeah, okay.
So, and as I describe on the rolling 12, we'll still see some June business activity come in over the next couple months. This is just typically what we would see in our August receipts. It is mostly June business activity. We do see some May and previous periods too.
Okay.
Our 0.5% transportation sales tax is essentially going to mimic what we see on our 1%. So we were down 28.7% for the month. Year to date is also down 18.9%. And then our third sales tax we have, this is going to be for public safety. When we look at this, we mostly compare it to our transportation since they are both 0.5-cent sales tax amounts. So we were down 28.5% for our monthly receipts, and year to date is down 18.7%. Again, this is also going to be mostly June business activity.
And the original assumptions were that we would be down 45%. So this is good news for us that the regular sales tax is only down 18.7 year to date.
45% for the entire year. Yes, sir.
Yeah, great.
Looking at our tourism tax receipts, so on this one, Julie, we only have about a month lag. That's because our tourism tax is actually collected in-house, whereas sales tax is going to be collected at the state of Missouri and then sent to us. So our July receipts were about $849,000 for tourism tax. That does put us down 44.3% compared to the same month last year. This is also going to be June business activity. And year to date, we've received just under 3.3 million. And for tourism tax, we are looking at about a 44.6% decrease over last year. Looking at the breakdown by class, you can see, we'll look down here at the same month comparison. So all classes except campground are down on the same month comparison. So this is looking at July receipts for June business activity. Year to date, all classes are down so far. You're looking at theaters with the largest percent decrease at 54.6%. Campgrounds have fared the best with only a 25.8% decrease compared to last year.
And as a caveat, many of you know this already, but I just will restate that during this time, businesses were just starting to reopen as a result of COVID. So it's not a whole big surprise to us that the theaters are the largest ones at this point in time because they were the ones that were closed a lot longer.
It's interesting. Yesterday, I saw a presentation from Jerry Henry on basically how COVID's affected the tourist industry throughout the United States. The numbers directly are correlating to what he said on the fact that we are doing far better than a whole lot of places in the United States because of decisions we made, and that the campground, it's not surprising at all that they are doing better because that's what people are looking for to keep their families safe. So it's really interesting how this correlates throughout the United States.
I thought that as well. When we watched that at the chamber meeting yesterday, Stan, really very impactful when you see our numbers compared to what their research shows. So good stuff.
Okay, moving on to the next report. This is our rolling 12. So in this report, we actually take our receipts and we put them back into the business activity month. So you can really get an idea of what business look like in each area of the city. So right now we are still looking at May 2020. I will update June once we get our sales tax receipts early in September. So our May activity, we were looking at a decrease overall of 47.3%. As Jamie stated, in May, we were still really, May and even into June, we were really looking at businesses just starting to open back up. So even April, when we had, non-essential businesses shut down, we were looking at about a 60% decrease compared to April 2019 business activity. So these numbers will continue to be updated each month. You'll see that May amount change. You'll see the June amount change. Typically, we see it change for about 3 or 4 months into the future, but sometimes even more than that as we've received late payments in from businesses or the Department of Revenue shores up some issues that they've had. The next page of this report is going to show you the annual growth in the economy. So when you look at this report, you're essentially making the conclusion that May 2020 is the year-end date for our receipts. So right now, if our fiscal year ended May 2020, we would be looking at a 10.4% negative growth in the economy from the previous 12 months. And you can see that broken down by area. So right now, Branson Hills has the lowest decrease of only 0.8% compared to last year. It looks like here, Tanger Highway 165 are seeing the biggest decreases. So we'll watch for these to change as businesses did get reopened and start paying their taxes back into the state.
Because Walmart sold all that toilet paper.
That's right.
Let's see, the next report here. This report is going to show you our city sales tax receipts with the payments restricted for TIF removed out. So at this point, we saw a decrease of about 253,000 spendable dollars for our August receipts. Year to date, we're seeing a decrease of $1.1 million.
This report, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Jamie, I was going to say it might be worth it to kind of explain how the TIF dollars, and I think that's what you were going to do.
Yes, sir, it is. So I was just going to add that this report is extremely beneficial and very helpful during this time. As I would direct your attention to what Melissa just said, $1,142,000 less in unrestricted money. So Julia, for your benefit, the TIF districts, the landing TIF district is what we would call a super TIF, just by the way that it was done for the Branson. So basically what that means is instead of a 50% going to debt service and 50% of the revenues coming back to the city, basically for the landing TIF, 100% of all of the revenue captured goes to pay off the debt service. So the city doesn't receive anything for spendable dollars. The Hills is a normal TIF, is what I call a normal TIF. 50% goes to debt service, 50% comes back to the city for spendable dollars. So this report is really important for you all to know how many dollars or less dollars we are receiving for operational purposes. And Julia, for your benefit, I will be glad to sit down and meet with you and walk through all of the different aspects of the finance, what we do, capital. It'll be a couple hour meeting, but we are always happy to do that to give you a better level of understanding.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And moving on to the second page of this report, we basically do the same thing that we did for the sales tax, and we show you the spendable dollars for our tourism tax receipts. So our June receipt, or our July receipts, excuse me, for June business activity, we saw a decrease of 631,000 essentially, spendable dollars for the month. And so far year to date, we've seen a decrease of about $2.4 million.
And real quick, Melissa, tourism is a special revenue fund. 25% of tourism goes for marketing, 75% goes for infrastructure. That's what this fund is about. Thank you, Melissa.
Okay, the last two pages of our report here. This is our monthly budget for 1% sales tax. So what we've done is on a 5-year annual basis, we've calculated an average of what we would expect to receive for each month. So you can see here that beginning in about April into May, when we got into the period of the shutdown, we started seeing our sales taxes coming in below what we would normally have expected to receive. So at this point, we are of the year, we are down about 18.5% of what we would have expected to receive in our sales tax receipts at this point.
And that is our original 2020 budget. That is not the COVID financials. Just so you're all aware of that.
Yes. The second page of this report is essentially the same thing, but for the tourism tax receipts. So for the month, we were down about 46.6% to our monthly budget, and year to date, we are right at the 45% decrease.
Thank you very much. We'll go into the cash reconciliation and balance sheet, but just a comment. 5 months ago, over 5 months ago, you all, city staff got together and you all made decisions about things that you needed to do. With my, I'm an old accountant, and to be at 44.9% and you all projected 45 is amazing to me. How you went through that process and did your budgeting to adjust for COVID is just, I just commend you for doing that. We're anxious to see those figures improve during the rest of the year. And if you could guarantee that right now, I'd like to hear it.
I make absolutely no guarantees.
All right. Well, you're right on track. Sadly, you're right on track, but hopefully we'll see improvement. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I agree with the mayor. I was just sitting here thinking how incredible that whole process was and how accurate you guys were. So once again, great job to the finance department. You guys rock.
Thank you. We have a great staff. We all joined together and we really appreciate that. Thank you.
Cash reconciliations and balance sheet, please.
Okay, yes, sir. I'm going to walk you through the income statement and we'll go through there, and then we're going to start on the general fund. So the general fund obviously is $10.8 million down to last year's $12.5 million at this time. One thing I will note is interest income. So I don't point this out all the time because we don't consider it a major source of revenue, although it is up there. Obviously our percentages that we were earning last year have gone way down, but I was pleasantly surprised to see that we're still at this point in time, 92% of what we budgeted. So we're going to see at least what we budgeted for interest income, if not more. And we're talking to our investors. I just talked to him and had a lengthy meeting with him yesterday. And so he's on top of it, and it's good to see some of those numbers being on the positive track.
Jamie,
Yes.
Jamie, before you go on, when you talk to him, I'm not really trying to get into politics too deeply, but I've been contacted by my folks that manage my 401k and my 457 plan, and they are intricately, very closely monitoring the political front because they are very concerned that if, let's say the political powers change, that our interest income is going to drop into a hole.
We did talk about that yesterday. So that conversation was had with us too. So I think they are all on the same page. Depending on the political swing will depend on how our investments do moving forward. That's absolutely correct.
Okay, I just tried to help verify because they were pretty blunt about it. So.
Yes. We typically tend to be really conservative when we budget those for that purpose. I mean, when we budgeted interest income, we budgeted at about half of what we received that year, just because we didn't know what we were up against. So I'm still thankful for that, but we even for this next budget year, we even took it down further just because we are unsure.
Okay, that's really the point I was trying to get to. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Okay, the expenditures, I pointed this out at the board meeting the other night, but our revenues are down, but so are our expenditures. And I think the departments have done a really good job of working to keep those expenditures down. There were several things that we did as a team to cut the expenditures. We froze some positions. We stopped spending capital dollars, one-time expenditures, all of those things. And the reason why we separate those things, we stop those immediately. So that's a large reason why we're down in expenditures, which is great. So at the end of July 30th, the fund balance is still $6.3 million for the general fund. We have projected, I believe, at the end of this year to come in right around 1.9, because remember, our projections assumed a 45% revenue reduction. Right now, we're only at 18.7%. So that's why you see a swing there as well. If there are any other questions regarding the general fund, I'll be happy to take those right now. If not, I'll just move on.
Any questions? Jamie, thank you.
The next fund is the Public Safety Fund. And we're sitting at about a $5.3 million balance there. The interest income for them are doing very, very well, which is great. It's just additional revenue that we can see coming into public safety, which is greatly needed. Their revenues at this point in time are 2.6 million versus last year were 3.1, and their expenditures are 6.4 million. So just a little bit up in expenditures. So their revenues are 2.6, their expenditures are 6.4. Our subsidy, as we talked about it at the Board of Aldermen meeting, as you all are aware, we had to reduce their subsidy by 25% as a result of COVID. They are sitting at 3.6 million right now. And then we also move in the code enforcement dollars from the general fund to the public safety fund. Because we transitioned code enforcement down to the police department. So $5.3 million is their unreserved fund balance, and that is based on a 0.5% sales tax special revenue. Is there any questions?
Hey, Jamie, refresh my memory that if you look at the transfers, that obviously the budgeted the 7.6 that was fixed for the year, then that's been adjusted as well, wasn't it?
Yes, that
transfer.
7.6
Okay.
has been adjusted down by 25% as a result of COVID.
Yeah.
So you'll see that decrease quite a bit.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Rod.
So the next fund that we'll look at is the Convention Center Fund, and they're going to speak to you all today. So I'll be really quickly with this one. $1.1 million in revenue as of July 31st, 2.9 this time last year. But their expenditures have also reduced quite a bit. They're sitting at 1.9 million this year versus last year was a little over 3 million. So their unreserved fund balance is $229,000. And we're going to talk about that a little bit further because they are in need of more financial assistance. And so I'm not going to steal what they're going to say, but then we'll talk about it when they get done. So if there's not any questions, I'll just move on to the tourism. Tourism is the fund that has seen obviously quite a large reduction. The revenues total 3.3 million at this time versus last year 5.9 million. As I said earlier, 25% marketing for this fund, 75% infrastructure. The total expenditures are 3.9 million versus last year at 6.7. One of the caveats last year is that there was a $1.4 million bond payoff. So last year's expenditures were quite a bit higher, and that's the reason why. So it was the 2007 bond series that was paid off in 2019, and that was a lump sum payment. So that's why you'll see some of that difference there. The tourism fund for the reserve balance is sitting at 13 million at this point in time. Is there any questions for the tourism? If not, I will move right on to the transportation fund.
And basically, just a reminder that the tourism balance, 75% goes to infrastructure, 25% is tourism.
Yes. The transportation fund is also a 0.5 cent. And I'm just going to throw this reminder out there. Transportation does have a sunset 2025. So we need to start thinking about that because it goes by in a flash. The total revenues for transportation is 2.7 million versus 3.2 million for last year. Expenditures are at 1.4 million versus 1.6 for last year. So again, the expenditures are down while the revenue is down as well. So they're sitting at a $2.4 million fund balance. I don't typically spend a lot of time. We're going to move on to the debt, Melissa. I don't spend a whole lot of time usually for the debt because it is based on our amortization schedules and our debt schedules. But I do want to highlight the TIF debt service fund really quickly. You will see the principal payoff is we've spent so far 11.3 million. I highlighted this in the board meeting the other night, but I want to highlight it again for you all. $7 million of that 11.3 million was a payoff of some bonds that were wrapped up in our 2015 bond refinance. So essentially in the 2005 series, there were a few of those bonds left over that were not callable until 2020. So when we did the refinance, as a portion of the refinance, they took that $7 million and they put it aside in a debt service reserve fund for 2020 to pay those off. So that did not come out of our general fund. That came out of a debt service reserve fund that was set aside for that specific purpose. But those 2005 series are gone now as a result of this. So we are thankful. What it shows is that we're paying off our debt. We're getting our debt down, and that's a good thing, even during this time frame. So I wanted to highlight that. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
It is. Oh, yeah. Hang on just a second. I got to mute myself.
Is there a question?
Hey, Jamie,
Yes.
if I recall correctly, Alderman Skanes was asking what that would mean for our community as far as the savings. Did we ever get that information to him?
Oh my, I did not. I haven't gotten that yet. I apologize. I know it's over 2 million, but the exact number, I will get it out to this group and
I
send
just
it to you
remember
all.
that. I thought I would remind you as well.
Thank you for the reminder. Yes.
All right.
Is there any other questions? There's a lot that goes in this fund and comes out of this fund. And it takes, there's some waterfall flow of funds that I enjoy, but not everybody does. So there's some really tricky things going on. So if anybody has any specific questions and wants to come in and sit down and talk to me about it, we're happy to do that. And then I will move on. We'll move on the capital projects fund. You can keep moving through this, Melissa, because we haven't done a whole lot of capital. You can see that we budgeted 3.8 million, but we've only spent 268,000. That is as a result of us cutting capital completely off right from the start when we knew this COVID was going to come. And as a result, the balance is still at 836,000. We'll move on to the Parks Fund if there's no other questions regarding what we've gone over so far. The Parks and Rec Fund. Now, I heard somebody say this yesterday, and I'm going to reiterate it. It's not my words, but I really believe this. Cindy is, aside from my staff, Cindy is probably the best financial person in this city. She's extremely detailed, her and her staff. And so I think they've just done a good job. And I think it's important to highlight they don't have a lot to work with, and they do a lot with what they have. So total revenues are 792,000 this year versus last year of 1.2. And keep in mind, we had to reduce their subsidy as well by 25%. Their expenditures are at 1.1 million versus last year at 1.4 million. So again, I will reiterate, it's not just this fund, it's not just the finance department, it was all the departments that did a really good job of cutting their expenditures. They're sitting at an 812 fund balance as of right now. Is there any questions regarding that? They had a $458,000 revenue reduction, but they also reduced their expenditures by more than 250,000. Any other questions? We'll move on to the Water Sewer Fund.
Do it.
Okay. Water Sewer Fund, we're sitting at 4.7 million. And versus this time last year at little over 5 million. I will highlight right there where you see the 249,000 for 2020 year-to-date actual. That was a grant that we received from the 2017 flood, we received that this year. So if you remove that and you want to see normal operations, it'll give you a little bit better picture, but we are thankful that we finally got that money. So 6.6 million for expenditures versus last year at 6.8. So they have reduced their expenditures as well. And we did cut capital here. So that is a good picture. And that's the income statements. The rest of them are just flow in and flow outs. You'll notice that the internal service funds are on the back. One of the things that we did have to cut as a result of the COVID financials were some of our transfers into those internal service funds. But as a result of us doing some of those transfers last year, we still have a little bit of a cushion for those internal service funds, which is why Mike was able to do that Clearwell that he took to the board a couple of nights ago, because we had that money already sitting into the internal service fund. And I think it's a really great picture of what those funds are and what the purpose is for them. But I will tell you, we will move on to the cash by fund statement. One of the things that I always say, and I will reiterate it again, if you want to check us and you want to check the finance department, make sure that all these three statements tie together. And I'm going to show you how to do that. The fund balances on these income statements should tie back to the fund balances on the balance sheet. There's two funds that it won't, and those are because minor funds are included.
Hello.
And the general fund. And we have a, hello?
We missed part of your
Sorry.
statement.
Oh, I'm sorry. The balance sheet and the income statement, the fund balance should accrete. There's two funds that they won't because there's minor funds involved with those, but we have a reconciliation that'll tell you exactly what those for. General fund and the public safety fund. There's public safety fund includes the inmate security fund, the police training fund, there's a forfeiture fund, there's a canine. Those are minor funds that go wrapped up in with the public safety fund. So it's about $148,000 difference, but we have a reconciliation and we do that every month to make sure that it still agrees. So your balance sheet and your income statement fund balance should tie. Now this operating fund, we call it our cash by fund or our Bob Simmons report. This is the cash amount that should tie back to the cash amount on your balance sheet. So there is a point in time, there is a point where all three of these statements should agree, and that should help you out to give you some assurance that what we're reporting to you in the funds is actually what we have in accounts, in our bank accounts as well. So if there is any questions on any of those reports, please feel free to ask me. We try to get those spot on and tie those back every month. And if you have a question, probably everybody else does too. So we're happy for the questions. Is there any questions at this time for those two reports?
Okay. Any other comments in your section, Jamie? Are we ready to move on to department reports?
Well, I've got those business license. Those are
Yes.
just informational reports. And the bid packets, these are just reports that I think we started this year. And it's just for informational purposes for you all to see the other areas that we do work with in our finance department. I wanted to make sure that we look at these reports all the time, but it crossed my mind that you guys might want to see this report too. So I hope it's beneficial to you. If you ever have any questions, please feel free to ask us. We want to make sure that you guys have as much information as we do. So the 3-year water consumption report really is a great report. We've looked at it for years just so that we can tie back and make sure that what we're reporting on our financials really makes sense as far as the water sewer. And if you look, it really, really does. Your consumption for just water is down. Irrigation was up slightly, but if you combine the two, you're still down by more than 16%. Sewer is down as well. And a lot of that speaks to, hotels being closed down, condos being closed down, not opening, and those kind of things. So really, we just post those reports out there so that you can have a full view and full picture of what we do. If there's any questions at all, I'll be happy to answer those.
Any question on the departmental reports? Then we have a review section for the disbursements and approval of disbursements over 15,000.
Those are pretty self-explanatory, but if anybody has a question, sometimes our descriptions aren't very clear, but if you have any questions, we're happy to answer those.
I would make a motion to approve the disbursements as presented in the report. This is Rod.
This is Pam. I'll second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? If you approve of the report as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. The ayes have it. All right. Thank you.
Hey, Stan, real quick.
Yes.
Stacy pulled up the actual savings from the refi,
Uh-huh.
and it is $2,296,900. So
Okay. Great. If you do that, email that to the whole board, please.
yes, sir, I will.
Okay. Ready to move on to the Branson Convention Center report? Let's do that.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
All
I
right,
can.
very good. Well, I just want to say thank you for the warm welcome to Branson. We've certainly found a home, my family and I here. Everyone has been certainly gracious and hospitable, exactly what we thought it would be. Wanted to give you a brief overview of second quarter reports. But before that, I wanted to thank anyone on the call here that attended the welcome reception for the Hilton General Manager, Harold, and myself being new to the area. It was good to see a lot of key players in the community, as well as understand their expectations of teamwork and economic impact. So thank you all as well for that. Going into the second quarter 2020 results, as you know, COVID hit right around the March-April time. And at that time, we had about 28 events cancel in the convention center when COVID hit. And so what you're seeing here, as far as, Melissa, if you could scroll down just a little, what you're seeing here is the effect of that. If we were in the first quarter revenue report, it would have looked a heck of a lot better because we were certainly pacing very well. So second quarter, April, is 0 events represented, unfortunately. So you can see the impact of that was very great. So while we had a variance in revenue, total revenue of 1.4 there, the expenses that were mitigated are substantial. So in second quarter total expenses, there was a variance of $833,000 and some change. So while we see that the revenue was going down, we mitigated immediately, and ASM took some pretty drastic action, and I'll show you that in the outlook in a second for year to date and beyond. So through cost-cutting measures and furloughs and salary reductions as well. So what you're looking at is second quarter overall bottom line is a loss of about $400,000 more than projected. And so, that's certainly not good news. However, it is looking up, and I'll go over that in a second. So the overall economic impact through attendance and such, you can see there that in second quarter, we only had 18 events in the entire quarter. because the majority of that made up the COVID situation. So we were estimating 24,534 in attendance for the second quarter, and actual was only 2,350. So you can see certainly the impact there. Something very important to understand is year to date as well. So Melissa, can we scroll up just a little? Perfect. Year to date, the overall loss versus budget variance is a little over $500,000. That being said, we had quite a few cancellations, which I'll show you in a second. But year to date, like I said, we're about 510 worse than we said we would be. Pre-COVID, obviously, this budget was submitted, not knowing that a pandemic would occur. So just some real highlights about the second quarter in 2020. We did have pandemic at its peak. Good news is we were one of the few centers operating at that time. While I've only been here about 3.5 weeks, I have been in the business about 25 years, and I do have intimate relationships with buildings of this size and magnitude around the Southeast region. And most of them had massive cancellations, massive impact to their budget, and zero economic impact levied because of it through the city. So kudos to the decision makers here on this call to keep this facility open and running. Even though there were cancellations, we still are operating with events here. And that being said, when it's time to get back into the grind and restart real hard in the industry, we will have a leg up because there's no lag effect like others that decided to close. It'll take them a year to ramp up. So be that as it may, what did we do when we saw that the revenue was not going to be what it should be? We mitigated quite a bit. A total of $1.4 million was mitigated out of the expenses, and that included over $900,000 in salaries and wages. So if you were here during the last few months, you may have seen a few directors cleaning restrooms, et cetera. We're doing whatever it takes to get this done and mitigate expenses while continuing to provide customer service. So kudos to the staff for sure here, because to cut $1.4 million out of a budget and still operate with no complaints is fantastic. And then you may have an opportunity. What is the outlook? What do you feel is going to happen for the rest of the year? Well, we're looking at about 58 events total that canceled in 2020. That changes every day, a little bit of plus, some minus, but for the most part, that represents over $1.6 million in revenue loss due to this pandemic. We were able to schedule 21 events to go to 2021 that were not already going to 2021. So that's good news as well. So that'll beef up next year a little bit. What is the net effect here? So we do a rolling forecast based upon what we have on the calendar, based upon our client discussions, based upon spending. We're looking at about a variance of $431,000 worse than what the budget was submitted. And I believe it was right around a 545 or so deficit. And that doesn't include any marketing expenditures, which is a whole separate conversation. But can you scroll up a little bit, Melissa? Next page. This is just a graphical representation of what we just talked about. And then it may be good if you would like to understand, where does Branson fit in the competitive set in the region over the impact of this pandemic? Branson's faring very well. Now, those numbers may not show it on a normal basis, but during this interesting time that we're in, if you look, whether it's Shreveport or South Bend, Indiana, or Evansville, Indiana, you can see that we're trending a lot better than they are right now. if you look at deficit in event days caused by COVID versus budgeted, we are still beating the trend, which is that next graph. So, once again, kudos to the decision makers that left the building open, because this would have been zero, and it would have been zero economic impact, like some buildings around the country are now going to have to start up from scratch. If you scroll up just a little bit, Melissa, to the next page, we'll look at that. So what we're looking at here, budget versus forecast. So with the rolling forecast is saying total revenues are going to be about 1.7 million. The total budgeted was 4.5 million. So you can see the gap there. Here's the mitigation. The total expenses are right around 40% or so, 45%. So once again, to keep pace with reduced revenues, we've cut dramatically. So the bottom line is that the deficit will be higher this year. However, it's not out of control like other buildings and markets have a serious situation. So right now the difference is about 431,000 and some change. Melissa, do you have the next one? So here's a little bit more detail about the rest of the year. And it's basically what we just talked about in detail of from August until December, and expenses mitigated right there versus income. And you can see that the mitigation plan at the bottom there represented salaries and wages at $906,000 cut. So that's representing 1.4 million and some change there as well. I believe that should be it, right, Melissa? Or do you have a second page?
If that looks like it.
Right. I'd like to open up for any questions if possible.
Any questions from the finance folks?
Hey, Sam, this is Pam Yancey. Welcome to our community. We're excited to have you.
Thank you very much.
Presentation. I have a question for you.
Yes,
What
ma'am.
kind of, do you have any kind of plans around if there, we keep hearing that there's going to be possibly another fall, outbreak or spike around COVID-19. Do you have any plans in your forecasted budget through the end of the year to address that, should that happen?
Well, we continue to have a mitigation plan that addresses current and a second wave as well. However, until we understand what the revenues would be in a second wave, we would react accordingly. But the plan for the safety and security side of things is intact right now, with masks, social distancing, different setups, 4 to a table, larger spaces for smaller events, those types of things to mitigate any further second wave actions that may occur here. But nationally, we certainly could be affected. And, we are in the process right now. Good news is when you go through something like this, an emergency crisis and a pandemic, and it causes you to cut expenses dramatically to the bone almost, it gives you a chance to reorganize yourself. And that's what we're doing here, because we want to solidify for the future. So our expenses are going to be lower in 21 just by virtue of us reorganizing ourselves here and making sure that if this does happen again, then it won't be as great an impact.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Ms. Yancey.
Any other questions?
Sam, this is Stan.
Yes, sir.
I was wondering, I know we talked about this, but from today forward, could I get the calendar on events that we have upcoming that are coming to town, hopefully, that you all have, as long as nothing changes? I know it's kind of a moving target, but. So
hey, Stan, this is John.
Yeah.
Sam sent that to me last night, and I will send it to you right now.
Okay, perfect. That's what I'm looking for.
Stan, just by reference, we have about 33 events from now until the end of the year.
Good. And that, I know we've kind of gone back and forth between groups about what's a a great event and what's a good event, but the economic impact from the convention center for our businesses downtown, our hotels, is really the driving force of what we're trying to do, because that generates money throughout the community. And this has really highlighted the fact that we know a convention center was never meant to really make money. It's meant to bring money into the economy of the region. So it's just, I need to keep a close eye on what we do have coming up so we can make sure that we're bringing in at least enough to keep things going, so to speak.
Absolutely. There's enough event activity to certainly keep things going, and to levy not as significant, but certainly a very good economic impact for the city.
Good. That's
Sam, I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, dear. Are you going to sing to us?
No, go ahead. I just put it on mute. I put it on mute. It's okay. It's a virtual. Your song started playing.
Hey, Stan, you're not on mute. You are not on mute.
Yes.
All right,
Okay.
Jamie, we're going to.
Sorry. Sam, I was just going to ask you really quickly. This is the finance group as well. So I think it is very important that we share what we talked about the other day. I think that it's extremely important that they know ahead before anybody else what your ask is going to be, in addition to what we've already paid out from September through December. Can you share that, please?
Absolutely. What we're looking at here is to finish the year. You see the rolling forecast, you see what we think that the end of year bottom line is going to be. So cash on hand versus liabilities and payables and such, to get up to date on those, as well as have operations funded for the rest of the year, is about $354,000 or so. We're in the process of tightening that up every day, but looks like that's going to be our good number. And so that's going to be the ask for the remainder of the year.
And that's in addition to using the capital dollars that you were approved a couple of months ago for?
Well, those have already been used.
Right. So I'm just trying to make the committee aware. So that's in addition to the ask that they came before to draw some of the capital down. So that's going to be a little bit of a further discussion. And I just wanted to make sure that he shared that with you so that we could prep you a little bit for that discussion.
Hey, Jamie, how much, I can't remember, how much was that we provided at the last gap?
They wanted to use it down to not spend, they had a minimum of 200,000 they wanted to make sure and keep in that capital reserve. And I believe they were going to use more than 200,000 of it. The exact number, I wasn't exactly sure, but I can pull that up and get it to you.
It was right around 240, Jamie.
Okay, so, and I've got the capital reserve and the capital breakdown and what they've spent so far. But I wanted to make sure you all are aware, because $354,000 more dollars out of our general fund at this point in time, unexpected, is not small.
Out of this, will there be a recommendation out of the Finance Committee to the Board of Aldermen in regard to the dollars that we need to put forward to be able to keep the convention center functioning?
We just had this discussion on Tuesday, so I wasn't prepared. I wasn't prepared for today to ask you all to do that. I was hoping to have further discussion as we're right in the middle of budget. I know what we're up against. So if you all approved and the board approved of the additional $354,000 subsidy from the general fund to the convention center, that would put the convention center subsidy a little more than 800,000, which to put it in perspective for this year, the parks subsidy from the general fund was 750. So I look at all of the subsidies and I look at what we plan on spending and those kind of things. Park subsidy was reduced to $750. And at this point in time, the convention center subsidy from the general fund will be well more than that. So that'll put it into perspective for you. But to answer your question, Mayor, I wasn't prepared today to do that. I can certainly get that out if that's a rush, but I wanted to give it a little bit more time and a little bit more thought. As you all know, I'm very conservative, and the $354,000 during this time period is a little bit of a strain, but nonetheless, we'll get there and we'll move forward. It's just a matter of how, but I want to make sure that we're very transparent and that discussion is out there on the table.
What are the timeline needs?
That would be
That,
go ahead, Jamie.
I was just going to say that would be up to Sam.
We're looking at by the second week of September.
That's when y'all need the money.
Correct.
So I don't think we're going to be able to meet that timeline just because of the process that we have to go through. So we'll have to probably talk about that because
Sure.
we have to get it to the board and those kind of things.
Sure. And, you know, however long the process takes, we will adjust our timeline on our end on payables. And of course, we're continuing our mitigation efforts. That's not a problem. And the reorg, of course. But I just wanted to just make one very obvious comment that you all probably understand already. But while the subsidy is going to probably total $800,000 or more annually, the amount of economic impact levied is greater than any other entity that receives a subsidy within the city. So there is a return on this investment. It's not like it's wasted money, of course, or ill-spent money. It's certainly an investment in the quality of life and the economic impact, and certainly having this center open, you know, and running will give us a running start for 2021 instead of some other disadvantages that other markets will have, which will end up beating them because of that to the punch with meeting planners. So.
And I think it would be really beneficial because, as you well know, the Parks Department does bring in economic impact as well. So that's why I did a comparison, because they bring in tournaments and those kind of things that are extremely beneficial to our city. So that in the conversation the other day when we talked about it, it would be really beneficial if we could see through the chamber, they got an economic impact calculator, I think a couple of years ago. If we could put some of those numbers in and look at some of those numbers through that economic impact calculator, so we don't just say there's a huge return, but we know and we narrow it down what that return is, because that conversation will be better with those numbers built behind it. That's just my opinion.
Will we have another meeting prior to the 2nd September meeting in Board of Aldermen?
We are having the September 10th meeting for the budget. So I think that we would have enough time to, right before the budget conversation starts, to put this on the agenda. Certainly we can do that. And then let me see when it has to go to the clerk's office. Can you look at that date? For the second read in September. You have to back that up 2 weeks. Stacy's pulling it up real quick and then I'll let you know. But I think it's doable, certainly. So actually it has to go on the 10th. So we can look at it, talk about it on the 10th, and then have it prepared, ready to go to the board at that time. So for the first reading, second reading in September. So the first read would be the second board meeting in September.
And so the earliest approval would be the first board meeting in October then?
Yes, sir, because it'll have to be a two reads, certainly. October, which would make it the 13th of October.
Okay. Any additional comments or questions from anyone on the finance group? Dan, any comments from your side? Unless you're singing a song somewhere. All right. No other comments, and I appreciate very much the report, appreciate the comment. We'll work internally here and see what kind of scheduling we can do with our time restraints and communicate with you all at the convention center, and we'll try to do what we can as quickly as we can.
Thank you for the support.
Thank you. Appreciate your report.
Thank you, sir.
All right, are we ready to move on the agenda?
Yes, sir.
All right, we're ready to move on to the project status reports. Oh, no, budget amendment first, I'm sorry.
Yes. So we had a budget amendment, and this is for the Parks Department. They were able to use the emergency purchase per our code to do this, but we still need to transfer money. I will say this is another benefit of the internal service fund, especially for this year. The compressor for the HVAC unit number 8 above the Recplex had to be replaced. The amount ended up being the $4,400, but the emergency memo, it was originally supposed to be well over $8,000. And the vendor that we used thought those prices came in a little bit high. So he talked to the supplier, and the supplier quoted them much higher than was anticipated. So they reduced the amount of the invoice. So I thought that was pretty exceptional, especially during this time. So instead of the $8,700 anticipated, it was $4,400. And then there was an additional, I think, $1,700 for a sensor board. The next one was the HVAC unit number 3. Again, the replacement cost is $6,850. So those two are going to be a budget amendment, but we are going to take that money from the internal service fund, as we were able to last year put money into the internal service fund. So fortunately we had that, and we were able to do that. So we're just asking for acknowledgement and approval to go to the board, and we're going to take this to the Board of Aldermen at the next reading and take care of it for the counting purposes.
Is there a motion available?
I would make a motion to approve the recommendation from the Parks Department for the expenditure to repair the air conditioning HVAC system.
I will
There's been a
second.
Second. Pam's a second. All right. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I would ask that anyone who's in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed, say no. The ayes have it. Going on to the next item on the agenda, project status report.
Thank you. Most of you are aware of what this report is. There's, Julia, for your benefit, there were 2 major projects. The downtown restructure, landscaping, revitalization, and the Highway 76 revitalization. Both of those have been put on hold for quite some time, but this is a way to track expenditures on a monthly basis so that everyone can see movement, anything going on in those 2 projects. This is what this report is for. There hasn't been a lot going on, as you can see so far. The Highway 76 revitalization is at $22.9 million, $2 million of that being the water mains. And then the downtown was at $12.8 million. And there's 2 phases left for that. But so far they're really at a pause right now. The CID did get annexed, and so that will be very helpful to pay for that Highway 76 project. So we're looking forward to seeing what that can do. As just a brief reminder, we still have our S&P recommendations. We probably shouldn't go to the financial market until 2022, until we have a full year of healthy financials under our belt. And they did say that after our full year of financials for 2021 was published, which is June 30th of 2022, they will take another look at it. So I just wanted to remind you all of that.
That's standard Standard & Poor bond rating agency, right?
Standards and Poor's, yes. They're the ones that rate the current bonds that we have, and due to the bond rating, that would be my recommendation as well.
Any comments from anyone? All right. Thank you for the update. As you see, we've got plenty of money left to spend. We'll try to do that as prudent. All right, then the finance director's report.
Okay, I have a few things that I wanted to discuss with you all today, mainly because we are about to get the budgets balanced for your presentation on September 10th, but a couple of things that have come up. I mentioned the CID a few minutes ago. There's been a confusion, let's just put it that way, between Department of Revenue and what's going on with the annexations for the CID. The only confusion there is about when the businesses are supposed to collect. The code says on the new taxes and those kind of things, the statute, not the code, says that it is the first day of the second month after the passage of the tax, first day of the second quarter. Well, that would put us at October 1st. And the CID board did a really good job and really strived to meet that June 30th deadline for the October 1st passage. Between then, we received a letter from Department of Revenue that said they would no longer be contacting the businesses when new taxes went in place. In the past, they used to send out a letter about a month ahead of time that said, this tax is going to go into place. Here's what you need to do for all of our businesses. Well, about July, we received that, and it said we're no longer going to be doing that. So that would put it on our staff to make sure that we did that. We've had to do that in the past anyway. So then we started getting calls from businesses and some of the CID folks, and it said, hey, we're receiving this letter from the Department of Revenue saying our collections are going to start on September 1. So we worked with the Department of Revenue. There was a lot of confusion. I sent them the letter that they sent us. We sent them the statute that we were going off of. I sent it to the assistant director of the Department of Revenue. Melissa called the county because the county has another tax increase that they were going to do. They were not even aware of any of this at all. So through that conversation, basically Department of Revenue, I said, well, what statute are y'all using? They said, oh, well, it's more of an internal process. So that is where we're at. So what we have to do, and I think my staff, we're going to just start making phone calls to the businesses to help them to know what they need to do and when. So at this point, they're saying September 1. So we're going to do that in the next, probably to start tomorrow. And then for the next week, start calling all the businesses in the CID to inform them of what they need to do and for some clarification, because there is some confusion there. We did let the Department of Revenue know. I did specifically that this is crazy. Let's just put it that way. And there were some other issues there. So I kind of want to let you all know, because we're getting it all. We did put together a brochure for Tanger for Jamie Whitus, and I think we're going to share that with everyone just so that they can inform businesses and we can better inform our businesses as well. It's more important that our businesses make sure they have the understanding than it is to be right. So anyway, I wanted to make you all aware of that in case you had heard anything, or in case you start to hear that, we're going to start making those phone calls to try and clear it up for everyone. And we'll reach out to the county as well and help them as well too, because they hadn't even been notified yet from DOR. The other thing I wanted to go through with you all is some of our budget assumptions that we have narrowed down. We have been able to get the funds balanced out for 5 years. However, what I say a lot, we do a 5 years balance to make sure that we can get there. But what you're going to see is what those assumptions are to get us to that point. And for 23 through 25, those assumptions probably aren't realistic. because the assumptions for 21 assume no cost of living increase. They also assume, but this is not an assumption. Our insurance came in flat with no increase. So that was very helpful. That was good. And so there are some hard assumptions out there. So for 23 through 25, those 3 years assume no increases whatsoever, no expenditure increases, no raise increases, no insurance increases. That was what my staff had to do to get things balanced. So what we're seeing is, and this is my viewpoint, this is my opinion based off of all of the numbers that we have looked at, my staff and I, we really need to change the way we start to view some of the things, because we're going to have to make harder and more difficult decisions, but maybe the best decisions for the city of Branson. And that's where priority-based budgeting comes into play. I'm very, very thankful that we have that process in place. And I think it's really beneficial for this purpose, for this point in time. But those decisions, you will see, and I just wanted to prepare you for what's coming. Those decisions, we're going to need them made, because if we don't, then our reserve is going to continue to decline, and we cannot level that reserve out. Now, right now at this point in time, general fund, we're going to present, and we'll go through it all September 10th. And that meeting is when you all get to say, hey, Jamie, I really think you need to change this, or we need to do this. That is a discussion purpose, or you can ask any questions. It's not just for me to present. I'll show you what we're up against, and then we can have that conversation, because I depend on your knowledge as well. So I just wanted to throw that out there for what, yes, we were able to get it balanced, but there's some hard decisions that need to be made down the road. Otherwise, we're going to be upside down, and we're going to start going in the wrong direction. And we've been here before, and COVID, nobody can help what has happened during this year of COVID, but I'm very thankful that we had the reserves in place to help us handle it. So anyway, that's my discussion, and I just kind of wanted to lay that out for you. The budget meeting is September 10th, 9:30 to 12:30. And then our special budget meeting for the whole board, for this committee, for the capital committee, that is on September the 24th. And I believe it is noon to 4:30. We may not spend all that time. That's really depending upon the discussion that you all have and you all want. And we will be providing you all lunch at that time. Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to get an invite out to us for that 24th. I don't have that on my calendar, so I want to make sure I reserve it.
Yes, we're going to get that out very quickly, hopefully by tomorrow.
Okay.
And so anyway, I just kind of wanted to prep you all for all of these things that were coming along this year. It all depends on our Christmas season, but I'm hopeful that we'll do better than my assumptions and our assumption. It's not just my assumptions, but the 45%, I think what you're going to see with tourism is you're going to see it, instead of continue to decline past the 45%, I think you're going to start to see it come back up a little bit. It may drop again in a few months, but maybe level out between 45 and 50%. And sales tax will probably even do better than that. So anyway, we just know that we're thankful for you all. We're thankful for the questions you provide. And I just wanted to just really lay it all out for you so that you know what to expect. If you have any questions, any concerns, let me know. We are open for anything that y'all have to add or share, or even if you think that we're not thinking about things right and we need to look at it a different way, we're open to look at it the way you want us to too. That's my report. Thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Jamie. Any questions from any committee member, any discussion items? Obviously, right now, we're doing a lot of activities, but we will have some capital things coming up in the future. From a finance standpoint, we've gotten a lot of information, and there's some actions that are going to need to be taken. I just encourage, if you have any questions or anything that we want to check into from this meeting, but obviously we're going to have meetings here in September that are going to be important to the future of the city.
Yeah, I have a question, or just a general information.
All right,
A
Mike.
lot of you may not know, this is Jerry.
Jerry.
I had to go through a plant closure, which was pretty traumatic. And I don't want to tie this to the thought we're talking about. What I want to tie is it was a very difficult time and it was very real. It was in a 4-year transition period. And the company brought in staff for a quarterly all hands meeting so that people like Stan and Jamie could come in and share what's happening. And because they all have to be party to this. And I heard, some realistic things like insurances and wages and whatever's, and people's expectations are going to be to move on. And we got to let them share that, hey, we're in a tough time now, kids. We need to have you on board with us. So we got through that with very little bad feelings and vibes, just by keeping the staff informed on a periodic basis.
Jerry, thank you.
Yeah, Jerry, thank you very much. We have our first employee meeting on August 31st, just to let you know.
Oh, right on, guys. I had no doubt. You guys are awesome. And I want to share Pam's atta-girl to the budget staff with Jamie and Melissa and all those guys. 45%. And where are you? 44.9. I mean, that's incredible.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Well, thank you all for your time. Thank you for your input. Good information. We've got some decisions to be made. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Pam makes a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
We got a second?
From Julia.
All right, Julia, thank you. Motion a second. Any discussion? All in favor of being adjourned, say aye.
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 All opposed to being adjourned, say no. We're adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Everybody take care.